Hi there, I'm Willford, and my remix of Going to the Sun by Postman has just gotten second place in the remix competition with over 300 submissions, which is insane to me. And to celebrate that, I wanted to do a walkthrough of the FLP. It's quite a big one. I wanted to show you how I came up with the melodies, how I did the arrangement, what samples I used, what sounds I used. So you can be looking forward to that in this video. It'll be split up into several parts. I'll first do the intro, then I'll do the first breakdown right here. Then I'll do the build-up right here. Then the first drop, which is what I came up first when making the track, but I'll do it just chronologically. Then I'll do the second breakdown, which won't be much longer, and I think the second build-up and the second drop are the same, except for the vocal chops. So if you want to skip through this, you can find the timestamps to that in the description down below. Before I begin though, I wanted to talk about a little bit more general things about this track. As I said, I came up with the drop before I came up with anything else, which is usually how I produce a track. I make the drop, and then I make the build-up, then the first breakdown, then the second breakdown, and then the intro, which is exactly how I did this track too. It was heavily inspired by two of my favorite artists at the moment. It was inspired by Jeremy Zucker, especially his track Wildfire, and Mako generally. Jeremy Zucker's Wildfire, because I was really fascinated by the idea of having like a really wide build-up and then that minimalistic drop, which I of course gave my own spin to. And also the chord progression in the breakdown is, I think, almost the same as in Wildfire, but then I changed it. And Mako, because of the way I wrote my guitar part, I'll tell more about that in a little bit. And they usually tend to have, for the intro, they have these huge reversed atmospheric intros, and I really wanted to replicate that because that's something that I really like about their tracks. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the first bit, which is the intro. As I said, this was inspired by Mako. It consists of a reversed note right here, which is automated in main level, so how loud it is, and the band 7 frequency, which is the cutoff. So it sounds like this on its own. Just having like that swell intro. Then I put some vinyl crackle underneath it to give it some more atmosphere. Just a little bit at high-end crackling. Then I gave it some sticks uplifters. Just subtle uplifters to give it a little bit more ambience. A little bit more of that going into that final climax. This little sample here was made using these things here, which is a little bit of the electric guitars and a bit of the piano, which on its own sounds like this. Nothing much. But then on the master right here, I have a reverb with the decay all the way up, diffuse like almost all the way down, so it sounds like this. You can almost recognize that sound immediately. I went through all of that altering in the automation to make it sound like it's really swelling up. Then it has this, that climax right here. And that is just a little bit longer than I had it before. I think I had it at 3 bars first, but then I wanted to have it a little bit longer. God, I really need something to drink. My throat is killing me. So, stay hydrated, kids. With the intro out of the way, we can start talking about the first breakdown, which of course has the vocal over it, but I didn't do much to the vocal, so I'll just turn that off for now, so we can focus on the instrumental parts. It starts out with these 4 guitar layers, which is just, I call this one tonic 1 and tonic 2, because they just play one note all the way through. It's like that. So that goes all the way through the entire track. And then I have this guitar part here, which is split up into 2 bits. I'll start with the top bit. And this was inspired by Mako, as I said, because what I did was just turned on my fan. I'm sorry if you can hear it. It's unbearably warm in the Netherlands at the moment, so I'll be sweating in no time if I keep it off. So what I did was I took my guitar. Usually you would play a chord like, oh, that's out of tune. Oh no. Okay, much better. So where you would usually play like an F sharp like this, I took the bass note and a top note and just played those 2. And that's something that Eden and Mako do all the time. Then after I recorded that, this is the processing that it went through. So here you can see it. It went through a glue processor. FabFilter Pro-Q, just more compression. Then an EQ. Getting rid of those nasty buzzing low frequencies, then a blood overdrive for some distortion, making it that crisp sound, and then some reverb, giving it some atmosphere, and then a delay. And a fruity balance, I guess, for volume automation. And I did almost the same for just these electric guitars, only these have a lot more intense delay. Then this track here, which is guitar wide, what I did for this was I sent the track to a few of my producer friends, and Alex from Ultimo, he said that the guitar wasn't wide enough, and I get where he's coming from. So what I did was I exported the guitar as it was, without the effects, I think, yeah. And then I took it here, and then just gave it an EQ to get rid of those low frequencies again. Then a stereo enhancer to give it that side channel idea. And then the glue over it, making it a little bit more wide in the mixer channel itself. And then you can hear it has that really like too wide feel, but with the normal guitar playing at the same time, it really fills up the stereo spectrum nicely. Then just to make it feel a little bit more authentic, I put some rainforest ambience over it. It's a really subtle sound. That's it. Has like the same function as the crackle in the intro. And this is how they sound together. Then the piano comes in, which is... It basically follows the chord progression of the guitars, but with some changes, and that is that this chord here, a C over an A in the bass, and this is a C over an E in the bass. So that's a C chord, but an E in the bass and an A in the bass. That's a little thing that I did in the piano, which I couldn't do in the guitar, because that's a lot of finger work that I don't really possess. So you can hear the piano starts in like very high in velocity, and then it calms down here. Because I wanted it to impact, but then fade back into the background. You can hear the effect of it being the same chord with a different bass note. I really like that walk up. You can see that the notes are not really neat, and in velocity they're all over the place, and that's because I played them in physically with my keyboard right to the side of me, and that really gives that piano that real feel. So if we take a look, this is a pattern called BD piano, breakdown piano, which is just the chords itself. And then I took a different pattern and recorded it. And it really sounds a lot more authentic, a lot more real, and a lot more calm, which is exactly what I was going for. And it is true piano emerald country with just an EQ on it to give it a little bit more sparkly, more bright in the high end, and that glue compressor for that punchy hits to give it that over-compressed feel which I was looking for. Then together with the piano, a sub comes in right up here, which is just a really simple sub, I think silent, just a sticks bass. And I just threw an EQ in to get rid of just one annoying frequency I was hearing apparently. While the sub and the piano come in, I also have this guitar single strum sample, which I recorded. It's just one chord playing on the guitar, but it has such a lovely ambience to it. Listen to this. I absolutely love that sound, I really do. And it was just, again, recorded with my guitar. Sounds like that, just playing the chords like really slowly. It has a Pro-Q on it to get rid of that low frequency. Again, I wanted this to be very bright. I just wanted that sub to be in the low frequency, and the rest I just wanted to have it high so that the sub had the total dominance over the low frequency. Then a compressor, just a slight compression, a huge delay, and a reverb over it to give it that huge ambience. Then another EQ to get rid of some more low mids and boost the highs just that little bit more. You can hear without it, it sounds very cluttered in low mids. And with it, it's very bright and nice. And then over all of this, I put a chorus, which gives it just that little bit of extra punch, like this is not a guitar, this is a synth or something, and I wanted that. I wanted this to be like some surreal sound where you couldn't quite put your finger on what it actually was. Then in the background, I have these finger snips playing. Nothing too special, just a Kashmir jungle clap. Oh, it's a clap, okay. Altogether, it sounds like this. So while we were in this bit of the breakdown, you could hear the breakdown strings come in slowly, which is just, I think, a Nexus preset with some chords. It's nothing too special, but it adds that final bit of ambience that we needed. XP dance orchestra and then drama strings too. That's it. That's literally it. And the horn also from Nexus, which is dance orchestra horns soft. And with just this slight volume automation, we can make it sound like really epic. Which is exactly what we needed for like filling up this empty space where there is no really apparent vocal. I really wanted something to fill that up, and I think these horns and those violins fitted that nicely. Then there is another bit of bass, just a treble bass guitar. I wanted this part of the breakdown to be less flowy and more like that, and this bass really helped conveying that feeling. Then we have another guitar down here coming in as well. This is like the 5th guitar already, but I don't care. Just playing a melody. Again, it started out as just a normal guitar. The trick to having so many guitars in this one breakdown without them colliding was I processed every single guitar completely differently. Like this one had that chorus effect to separate it from the rest. This one was very wide. This one had the main focus, so it was really narrow and really powerful. This one had that delay and that ambience. And this one has a sausage fattener and a distortion as well down here. And then a reverb, getting rid of the dry, putting the ER, I don't know what that stands for, but putting the ER at maximum. And the wet quite high, not that high, and the decay just a little bit there. Again, giving that feeling that it's not really a guitar, that it might have been just a synth programmed. But that slide really does so much. And the velocity difference also does so much for the track. Then before we come into this part of the breakdown, we have this little fill, which is just a daily FB tom fill, but I cut it up so that it fits better with this BPM and this specific tempo. And then I think we can move on to the drums, which is of course the main part of this bit. As I said, I really wanted to convey that. Bit. So what I did was, there's this crash symbol, reverse crash, and then hitting crash. And I put some extra reverb on this crash to make the decay a little bit longer. Then we have this kick here. Just a little bit of processing on that. Then the snares is what I spent the most attention on, because this is literally, there's 6 tracks with snares. So there is this snare bit, which is a snare, a more like mid snare here. Then we have a really tight snare to fill up the attack, and then we have a clap right here to fill up the release, and then together it sounds like this. Every even snare I added a reverse Kashmir clap to give it that extra little bit of difference, and then every 4th snare I gave it a reverb clap effect, like that. Then I also have these playing in between. I really like having like sticks in between just to give it a little bit of offbeat sound. And then we have like almost the most important bit, which is the hat. And we have a little bit of a louder hat playing every like. And this drum loop just gives a hugely chill vibe to the entirety of the track. All the layers we have right now sound like this. slowly but surely we transition into the build-up. Oh, I've already been recording for half an hour. Time flies. Okay, so for the build-up, what I did was I took the tight chords for the drop, which I'll discuss in a little bit. And I removed some layers, I think, where the tight chords in the drop would usually consist of these two tight chords layers. For the build-up, I just used the top one, and I volume automated the tight chords. And I remember also cut-off automating them. Yeah, there it is. So it just starts off as this low sound, and then gradually it gets louder and gets more higher frequencies, it gets more apparent. Then we can also see this Endless Smile automation clip here, which gives an extra punch to the build-up, what Endless Smile does. You can hear it adds reverb and it adds a secondary like sound to it. The higher the automation goes, the higher that riser sound goes. You put it on the master channel and it gives an extra punch to your build-up. You can make literally anything a build-up with this plugin. Then I also have like a little bit of a high-pass filter here, cutting off the final like low frequencies to give the drop a bigger impact, which is a trick that people tend to do. So yeah, that's that. The breakdown sub fades out because of the high pass filter. Then we have this Styx uplifter here though, which is just a white noise uplifter. This one too, just white noise. This one has like beeps. Like I tend to just take bits of the drop, take bits of the breakdown, and then add some risers, and that's my build up. Then we have a cashmere long fill. Pitched up with the time. I pitched it up like this. Then here I can see a Styx fill, which I think I used this exact fill in my drop design sessions on Future Bass. Then here you can see I have the guitars fade out right at the end of the build-up. And have the piano fade out as well. Then I have just one more fill to layer with the other one. Oh, which is just the fill that I used to introduce the acoustic drums earlier as well. For the rest, I don't think there's like much happening down here, except for some like transitional effects to it. That's just the build-up. It's just this thing from the drop and then all of the breakdown layers with them slowly fading out and some effects in between. So now we can actually get to the bit that everyone has been waiting for, which is the drop. But before we get fully into that, I want to adjust your attention to behind this project, because I have two audio files here, which are called Idea and Idea 2. And I really wanted to show you guys this, because this is really a look into what my brain did when I came up with this drop. I had not listened to the original mix before I made this remix. I just put up the acapella right here and I let it play and I just recorded whatever came up in my head. And that is this thing here. Something, look, you know, so in this little audio clip, you hear me say a few things that I want for this track. I want that dynamic range bit where it's like, where it's first two kicks and then an open bit of chords and then two kicks and then an open bit of chords. And then here an ARP playing top to bottom. That is exactly what I did. Like I modeled my entire drop after that one little bit. This is basically, what you hear here is basically just the initial thoughts of what I wanted this track to sound like, except for like the top lead here. But this, basically exactly what I was thinking of when I thought of what I wanted this track to sound like. So people always ask me, how do you come up with your melodies? And that is one way of doing it. I don't usually do it that way, but this is one way. It's just record whatever's playing in your head and play with that idea and actually make it come true. Right after I recorded that audio bit, I came up with this pattern right here, Ideas. It's called Ideas. And you can hear basically exactly the idea that I put into, except I hadn't separated the tight chords from the wide chords yet, but that was just all in my head. Another thing that you hear in this is that I wanted to make this remix a semitone higher than the original. And that decision I made because when I held remix competitions, it was really refreshing to hear a track which was in a different key. When you've already heard like 300 remixes in the same key, just that key difference made a key difference, so to speak. That was my initial plan, but then I showed my dad the remix that I made, and he said, why is the voice so squeaky? And then I changed it back. He told me the vocal sounds a lot more professional when it was in the original key, which I agreed with, so I changed it back. But that's the reason why the guitar sounds a bit odd, I think, to jump back to not discussing the drop. But what I did was I recorded the guitars one semitone up, and I didn't want to record them again, so I just pitched them down. I think it shows, especially like in this bit here, you can clearly hear the guitars, and I think it sounds a little bit off pitch. I have an earlier version of my Going to the Sun remix. It sounds like this. As like an like a feeling that I'm as like an ocean. You can hear the guitar playing. It basically already has like every single layer that the final track also had, but a little bit worse mixed, of course, because it has some time. So what I'm saying is stay true to your original idea, but don't be afraid to venture away from that a little bit. And the top lead is a really good example for that. When I first produced it, it sounded like this. And I thought there is something missing and I can't put my finger on it. And then I accidentally took some of the top lead and put it in the wrong place, which was here. And it just completely fit. It fit so much, and it filled up those empty bits between like the chords. Those empty bits between the chords not being there, and it just fit, so I kept it. So the top lead consists of 4 layers. The top lead 4 right here, which is a sticks thing, sounding like that. You'll hear me referring to the tight bit and the wide bit, which is, this is what I call the tight bit, and this is what I call the wide bit. Because the chords are a lot wider, the chords are tighter in this part. So there's a tight bit and a wide bit, and I won't be explaining that any further. So you have this lead that is just playing in the tight bit. And then I layer it a lot more in the wide bit because I wanted it to be a lot more present in the wide bit. You hear me adding lower octaves and adding super saws to make it a little bit more apparent. And I think it worked really well. Then for the next thing, which is the tight chords, I didn't do much to these, I think. It's this chord progression that I came up with right here. And it's just 2 chords layers right here, just a sticks thing again. Oh, it's the same bit 1 thing as the top lead 4 right here. Okay, cool to know. And this one here is chord expedition. Adding a little bit more of low mids to the chord sound to it. And then I wanted to add some sort of a lead feel to it. This is bit 3. So this right here is just adding a few more harmonics to the chords and making sure that the person who listens to the track follows the melody that I intended them to. So here you can see. That's the melody that this chord progression has. Okay, then for the wide chords, these are a little bit more difficult to explain because I played with balance a lot for these. So this is how they sound on their own. You can see it's a pretty basic chord progression right here compared to the tight chord. You're probably asking yourself, what are these for? So one of my ideas for these wide chords was to have it fade in like this. So it would sound like this. Instead of like the short, what I have right now. But it didn't really sound good in the mix. So I kept the notes because it has like, that little effect is just enough. That little fade in is just enough for it to be cool. So I just kept it in. The effects on these are noteworthy, I think, because it's 4 layers, all sounding like this. I wanted it to be like very plucky, but also very wide. So that's why I picked these layers. And then the processing on it, originally they sounded like this. You can hear it's very different. Here you can see me boosting the highs to give it that extra wide feel. Sausage fattener, of course. Really loud. Huge difference. then the glue to tone it down a bit more. After the sausage fattener, you can see that there's basically no dynamic range in the chords at this point. Then boosting the highs just a little bit more because there wasn't enough highs yet. And then right here we have a limiter for sidechaining, another limiter for sidechaining. These are just for the kick and the snare. And then the two biggest effects. There's this huge reverb on it, which helped with the open feel, I think. And then the fruity balance, which is the biggest effect, because without it sounds like this. And with it sounds like this. And that's that. I really wanted to create this illusion of it being controllably uncontrolled. And that's really what I think my style is like. And let me explain further. What it means is that this thing on itself is completely uncontrollable. Listen to it. And then with extra manipulation and extra like sounds added to it, it has this tight feel to it. And that's exactly what I was going for. I might not be the best at explaining like what it feels like to me, but you'll just have to get it or not get it. Then down here we have the mid bass, which is just playing the bass note. You can see that I got rid of a lot of highs for the mid bass, and that's because I really wanted those chords and that lead to dominate the high end, and I wanted the mid bass to just be mids and low mids because I wanted the sub to dominate the low end. So the mid bass right here is just to fill up empty space in the frequency spectrum. And then the sub, which was on purpose really loud. Really loud and concentrated. And as I said, that's on purpose because without the sub, this loses so much power. Just listen to this without the sub now. And then with the sub. It's a world of a difference. And you can see in the frequency spectrum up here that the sub really means a lot for this mix. Then we have the percussion, so a kick, which is, I think, the first cashmere kick that I could find, and I didn't change it. And this is a Styx snare. Yeah, Styx snare wet from Sticky Future Bass Volume 2, I think. Sticky Future Bass, is there Volume 2? I think it's Volume 2. Then a tom. Extra clickies. Just those little clicks, which I also had in the breakdown drum. Then some hats to accentuate the attack on the chords. They're really loud, but because the chords attack at the same intervals as the hat, you don't really notice them that much. I'll show you in a little bit. Then just a simple crash. Really small crash, but I didn't really need a big crash. And then an open hat right there. And then in the open bit, I wanted to accentuate like it being very wide and very open here. So I added a little bit of a ride. And this vocal shot right here, which is just a Styx vocal chop again. The drum beat with the final bit all together sounds like this. So you can hear all those little details, and now all together, it sounds like this. You hear how empty it sounds without that hat being there? Sometimes there's little things that seem like details that really make or break your drop. Like without that hat, it would have been awful. Then right away up here, we have this vocal bit, which was in the remix pack. Yeah, we're going to the. That was given. And then I added a pitched up. Yeah, we're going to. And then this tape stop at the end. Yeah, we're going to. Really makes the effect, I think. Then for the second breakdown, I think the only thing that's fundamentally different is the drum beat. Because as you can hear, in the first breakdown, it sounds like this. And in the second breakdown, it sounds like this. It's just minor things like that make the track just that much more interesting to listen to. And for the rest, the layers don't really change. I stripped back all the layers in this bit, so it's just the vocal and some of the vocal effects that I pulled from the stems. And then the second build-up is exactly the same, other than I added a vocal effect here. Added this to the build-up. And the only thing different about the second drop is that it's twice as long, which was a conscious decision because I wanted this drop to be shorter, because I think that if you play this drop twice after one another, it will get boring really quickly. So here we have the drop, but then with an extra vocal chop. This one is just the vocal chop, but then pitched upwards. Which is another example of me taking an idea, recording it, and then making it into something in the track. So the original idea sounded like this. And you can hear that's basically exactly what I did again. So you can see it's alternating between the bit crushed vocals and the vocal chops, and I really like that dynamic. And the final bit is just the vocal with a little bit of a harmony there and the normal chords. And right down here you can see the reverse note from the intro coming back, giving it a nice reverby ending. That's about it, and that was 29 hours and 45 minutes of my time making this track. I really enjoyed it. Huge thanks to Asher Postman again for this opportunity for us to remix his track, which is really cool. And then another huge thanks to him for making me second place in the remix competition. I'm still buzzing about it. Just in case you didn't know, me and a friend of mine, Jafar, just released a new track of ours on 99 Lives. And if you want me to do an FLP walkthrough of that one too, be sure to leave a thumbs up and leave a comment saying you want to. Also leave a comment saying what I could have done differently. Any feedback will help in the next and upcoming videos. Really glad I'm back on YouTube making new videos again, because I really missed this. Really missed you guys. And yeah, I think that's it. I put a lot of effort into these videos, and if you like them, please be sure to subscribe because it really helps the channel out. And yeah, that was about it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.